Hey guys, it's Rob Anderson with DollarMoves. I'd like to welcome you to another video, actually another live show. Super excited today. We are going to be talking about 5 tips to successfully sell toys year-round on Amazon. But before we do, I wanted to ask and make sure that you can hear us well and that you can see the picture. Is everything coming through okay? If you can see and hear me well, go ahead and give me a comment or thumbs up and let me know. And then that way I can keep going and not just be sitting here talking to myself. Speaking of thumbs up, if you catch yourself smiling during this or you find the information valuable, make sure and hit that thumbs up button below the video. It helps get the content out there to more people. It can help other people out. And it also lets us know that you're finding value in the content. Now, another thing, too, I want to make sure that everybody gets this information, and you'll see when I put out new videos. If you go ahead and subscribe to the channel, that way YouTube will contact you when I put out new videos. You can also, I post this stuff on the Facebook page for DollarMoves. So it's facebook.com/DollarMoves. And then you can also go to the website and sign up for the email newsletter. So that's DollarMoves.com, and I send out an email to my people there as well. So today is going to be an awesome show. Are we, is it looking like people are seeing us and hearing us and everything?
I see at least one thumbs up, so I think we're good.
Good. All right, because I must need to refresh that. Okay, awesome. So the show today is going to be super cool. Like I said, we are doing 5 tips to successfully sell toys year-round on Amazon. And our toy experts today are Beth and Seth Moss. Now, I want to give you a quick bio here about Beth and Seth. So Beth started selling on eBay. Now, you guys probably already know these guys. They were on, a couple months ago, and people loved the show. But if you didn't get to see, I want to go ahead and let you know a little bit about them before we get going here. So Beth started selling on eBay to supplement her job at Kroger. She would go to work at 4:30 in the morning with that job, which sounds super fun, right? So while healing from a sprained ankle that left her without income or insurance, she stumbled across Jim Crockrum's proven Amazon course that taught her about Amazon FBA. This started her selling in 2010. Now, during her 6 years of selling, she had become a single mom and was able to make a full-time income selling toys year-round while also homeschooling her kids. Her oldest son, Seth, who's with us today, started helping her in the first year of selling, and eventually he was able to start his own successful Amazon business. Beth and Seth are the creators of Making Big Profits with Toys outside of Q4 course and coaching. And we'll be talking more about that later, but you can find out more about it at dollarmoves.com/toy coaching. And make sure if you do sign up there to use the code ROB2017 to get the special discount that's only for the DollarMoves viewers. So welcome to the show, Beth and Seth.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely. Yeah. Super excited to have you guys here again. It's really neat to have you here. Now, I realize when I go through that bio, it's really all about mom here, right? So Seth, you want to give a little something about, like, I know you started your business, maybe go from there, just a little bio on you as well.
Yeah. My business kind of started out of necessity when I had a job lined up, but got into a really bad car accident that left me with a concussion, and I had just started the job. So I was kind of like in the probation period. So they kind of said, you know what, we can't really do that. We need someone who can work for us. So I had no job and no money coming in, so I needed something to do. And my mom was already doing that. I'd been helping her for a while, and I was kind of getting the feel for it. I mean, obviously I wasn't like in the game, so to speak, but I was around it and kind of understood what was going on, at least at the basic level. So I had about $300, and I just said, I'm going to go for it. This is what we're going to do. And it was not easy by any means. There were definitely weeks where I thought to myself, well, this isn't going to work. I'm going to have to find something else to do because, I only made $20 this week.
Oh, right.
But, over, what are we in now? I think I'm in my 7th year now. Wow. All these years later, I can look back and say it was probably the best thing that's ever happened to me. The best thing that ever happened to me in the financial world was that I got into the worst car accident of my life.
That's what I was going to say. That's crazy.
Had a concussion, wasn't able to do anything. Yep.
Yeah, insane. Well, I sure appreciate you sharing your story because I know that you guys are a team, an awesome team, and I want to get into what we're talking about. But I got to see you guys working together this year in the Q4 group, and the success that was going on there, and showing people your doing the Zooms and how you guys work together. And I know that anyone that saw this YouTube video can see you guys work really well together, and I just think that's so cool. So I'm super stoked to have you guys here. So did I miss anything that maybe you'd like to add that maybe I missed by chance?
I don't think so. I think that pretty well covered it.
Okay, awesome. Perfect. Well, again, I'm super glad to have you guys here and excited to let you share your knowledge with the viewers. So let's go ahead and get to it. So as I said, today's topic is 5 tips for selling toys year round. And yeah, I'll just let you guys go ahead and start talking about them. And any of you guys who are listening, if you have questions or whatever, we will be taking questions from the chat box. So go ahead and put them over there, and we will do what we can to get to them. So now it's right. Up to you guys to share the knowledge.
All right. Thank you so much, Rob. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right. Can you hear me okay? Because when I'm talking, I can't see myself. Is that right?
I hear you fine. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I get confused with all the technology stuff. Okay. So yes, this is actually the kind of stuff that we teach all year. When we're doing our coaching groups throughout the year. So we're kind of going to give you guys just an overview on that so that you can kind of get a few tips and enough to get you started if you want to. And then if you want a little more help, then there's always the coaching groups that you can be a part of. So yes, so we pulled together 5 things. And the first one we wanted to talk about was keeping up with the trends, because this is a huge one, especially for people who may not have kids or who haven't had little kids for a long time. Because a lot of times people like that, they get out of touch with what's going on out in the toy world. And so we've had a lot of grandparents, especially, who said that their grandkids think they're super cool now because they know all these kind of trends that are going on in the toy world, and it's all because they started to pay attention to that so that they could sell the toys. So yeah, so if you want to be like the cool aunt, uncle, the cool mom, cool grandma, whatever, then that's what you want to do. So
yeah, until they figure out they're not getting the toys that are all cool at your house.
Right.
My kids are like, what? My nephew always comes over. Is that for Amazon?
Right. Exactly. I know. And yeah, I still my daughter is 11 now, and for the last, I don't know, 5 years, 6 years, I mix all of her Christmas gifts in with all my Q4 stuff, and she has no idea. And it still is working today. I just can't even believe it. So, but that's how I find out a lot of times what she really likes, because I'll bring things home and she'll go, oh, I really want that. Or, vice versa. Sometimes it's like, oh, I don't really like that at all. So you just never know. But one of the things that we wanted to tell you, that we have a few tips on how to keep up with those trends, because you might be saying okay, I know I should do that, but I have no idea where to start. So we are going to tell you where to start with that stuff.
Well, if I can just interject real quick here, I got to tell you, I really felt that when I started this year. I've been doing shoes so much of last year. So when I came into Q4 with you guys, the Q4 group and everything, I really felt so out of touch because I hadn't been keeping up with the trends. And there was so much that you guys were talking about that I was like, oh, I had no idea. So, I mean, it really makes it like night and day. And great research tool for that. Take a little kid to Toys R Us with you as well. See what they're going for, because that's usually some good stuff. But yeah, I agree. It's night and day to go into a store where you look at the shelves and you're like Toys R Us. Walk into a Toys R Us and tell me you're not overwhelmed, especially if you don't know what you're looking at, right? But you go in there with some of the knowledge that you guys have, or if you've stayed up on your trends, you go in there and you go, okay, well, that's a dollar sign. That's a dollar sign. You know what to go for. So yeah, I totally agree. It's a huge difference from knowing and not knowing.
Right, exactly. And I've even gotten some really great tips just from listening to kids and parents in stores and what they're looking for. So that's been a good thing too. But the first thing that we usually tell people to do, because it's easy and quick, is to actually watch television. To go to the kids shows, the kids channels like Nickelodeon and Disney Junior and Sprout and Cartoon Network. And we also tell them to go to Netflix, because there are actually quite a few kids shows on Netflix that aren't run on major networks. So that's a good place to go to get a few ideas. And also you can go to YouTube, and if you search for the toy fair for the current year, they will, I'm not exactly sure when that is. I think it should be coming up here soon, but once you go in there and you search for at least the most current year, so and start watching some of those videos, there are a lot of people out there that go to those, and then they'll post their videos and their thoughts on things, and I have found a lot of really great ideas just by watching those videos myself. And I mean, I have kids, a bunch of kids, so most of them are adults now, but yeah.
Well, you know, one thing I found, like my sister, they moved over here in the last couple months, and so we have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, and these kids are on, like, speaking of the YouTube thing, they're on YouTube. They're learning everything about all the toys, and they'll tell you all the best toys, man. I couldn't believe all the information I was getting from them.
Yeah, it's surprising. We actually call Alyssa, my daughter Alyssa, the head of R&D, because she does all the research for us. So she'll go on YouTube and start watching some of those videos, and then she comes back and she's like, okay, Shopkins season 7 is coming out, and this is where it's going to be. This is what it has, or
nice.
You know, whatever. So yeah, that's been really helpful. And then I don't have to myself sit there and watch while they talk about all the toys.
Right. Do you ever do that thing where you God, what do they call it when you record the TV? What is that called? Do you know what I'm talking about? When you can record shows for DVR or whatever. DVR. Yeah. Like, record those and fast forward to the commercials, right?
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, that was one thing I've done before.
It is a good idea, if you have a DVR or something similar, to set it up to record a channel like Nickelodeon or like Disney Junior, Disney regular, any of those kinds of kids channels, and then just not even necessarily watch everything, just kind of see what shows are played the most. The popular shows tend to get 3 or 4 runnings in a day. You know, if you ever watch Nickelodeon, you'll see SpongeBob gets played a lot, even though, you know, it's been around for 17, 18 years now, I think. It still gets played a lot because it's still really popular. And so if you see a lot of shows that are consistently being played a lot, that's usually a sign that kids are really watching this. And so they really like what they're seeing. And so the people who are running the network realize, let me make sure that this is something that keeps going. And those also tend to be the ones that are most heavily focused by the toy commercials, because the toy commercials, the people who do their advertising, they realize we want to hit the shows that the most kids are watching. You know, we don't want to hit the shows if the kids aren't watching it, because the kids decide what's popular. Kids drive the toy market. Parents have almost no say in what goes on in the toy market. It's all kids. And so if the kids don't like what they see, it doesn't matter what you got. So they make sure they focus on those shows. And so if you even just kind of fast forward through those, you can find a lot of new information just right in front of your eyes, even if you're not necessarily watching, just kind of seeing what's going on and what kind of things are being played on those stations.
Yeah, that's so smart. Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to get off track there with that, but I'll tell you, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers this year, I had no idea that stuff was still going on, but I killed on it this year, so right on.
Yeah, some of those really old shows that, like, my boys who are all adults watched when they were little are now like coming back and are being remade and everything. And you know, you would think that it would have died out by now, but it hasn't.
That's why you got to stay on top of those trends, just like you said, for sure.
Exactly. Yeah, another thing to remember, if you're really like short on time or you don't have a DVR, I don't have a DVR and I probably wouldn't be able to figure out how to use it if I did. But if you don't have the capability of doing that, then the prime time to watch for things on those channels is either in the morning, like early morning, where kids would be getting up and getting ready for school. And then also like at the end of school time in the later afternoon and Saturdays.
Smart.
So those are the kind of things to watch. And also Disney Channel especially is really big on putting out new movies on a Friday night, probably, you know, for family time, new movie kind of thing. So like Disney Channel specific new movies. A lot of times they'll come out on a Friday night. So those are some times if you know, are just short on time or really don't want to slog through, you know, 50 hours of watching stuff. Right. Those are a few times to kind of concentrate on. And then also watch for movie releases. And we're not just talking about movie releases in the theater, but also for some of those popular movies that came out like in the last year. When those come out on DVD, usually you'll see another resurgence in those toys. So that's another thing to watch for. When those start to come out, then the toys will get popular again. And one place that we look for new movies that are coming out in the theater is movieinsider.com. It'll list all the movies that are coming out for the year.
Another thing to really keep in mind is that recently, especially in like the last 5 years or so, the major channels like Cartoon Network, Disney, Nickelodeon, they've gotten really good at making high quality movies that kids want, and they are now players in the toy market with them. Descendants, Teen Beach Movie, High School Musical. There's so many movies that are coming out only on these channels that are big players in the toy market. Descendants was huge, not the last year, but the year before. It was one of the biggest toy movers, even though it had really only appeared and become cemented in people's minds once the movie hit. I believe it was Disney Channel. And so, you know, if you were always looking at like, you know, what's in theaters, what's coming out in theaters, you would never have heard of the Descendants.
Right, you would have missed that one,
but they were one of the biggest players that year, and the whole way to find out what was going on with them was to watch the Disney Channel. Now they were a book before that, but books don't generally move toys. It's really the visual stuff that moves toys. And so once they hit the movies and got into the channels consistently, I mean, you could, that movie was playing like 4 times a day. It was ridiculous, but you know, the kids loved it and they didn't care. And so they all wanted the toys that went with them.
That is awesome. Do you guys write off going to the movies? Do you do that kind of stuff? Do you go to the movies?
I've never tried to write it off.
I was just thinking it's complete research. I mean, someone could just watch this video and be like, yeah, they're totally like watching Nickelodeon, not for fun. Like they're like, that's crazy. It just came to mind. I was just like, wow.
I've never thought about that. That I might have to ask somebody if that's actually okay to do, because
just throwing it out there. It just came to mind.
Yeah. I always say that's what I'm doing, but I haven't ever actually done it. So.
Right.
Okay. All right. So that was on keeping up with the trends. So that's one of our main things that we want to start with. That's a good place, very basic place to start with. So that way, because I mean, seriously, if you walk into a Toys R Us and you don't have any idea what's going on in toys, you're really going to get overwhelmed. I mean, it just happens. We have a lot of people in our coaching groups who tell us that happens to them all the time, that they're scared to go into Toys R Us. Seth and I love going in Toys R Us. It's super fun. Right. So, but I mean, you know, and by the time that they're done in our coaching group, they love going into Toys R Us too. But yeah, to start with, you want to make sure that you at least have some general idea before you walk into a big toy store, what's going on while you're there.
Yeah, even one wall of toys is crazy, but you look in Toys R Us and you're just like, this never stops.
Right.
But I'm the same way. Yeah. We like going too, like, especially when they have those super late nights and there's nobody there. That was a fun one during like Q4, yeah.
Yeah, we like those too. But of course, our Toys R Us, Seth and I were driving by it yesterday, And when we drove by, there was like 3 or 4 or 5 cars in the parking lot. And he even said, he was like, "Aw, our Toys R Us, nobody shops there when it's not Q4." And I'm like, as long as they stay open, I don't care. It's great for us.
That's awesome.
Okay, so our second one then is to keep up with the holidays and seasons. So and it's not quite as simple as it sounds. I know everybody's thinking like, "Oh, well, that's easy, you know, Q4 is Christmas and whatever." There's a little bit more to it, because it's not so simple as, okay, like when you go into the store and the stores are putting out the holiday stuff like 3 months in advance, and then you think, "Oh, I'm going to load up on all this stuff now." It's not quite that simple for selling toys, because sometimes you don't realize what's going to be super popular till it gets a little bit closer. So when the stores do start putting out all their holiday stuff, it's time to really start watching it, but not necessarily start buying it and loading up. Usually about 2 to 3 weeks before a holiday is prime time for selling like kids' holiday kind of stuff. The bigger the holiday, the longer the lead time. So like if you're getting ready for Valentine's Day, you know, you might be talking about 2 to 3 weeks before would be prime time, you know, towards the end of January, beginning of February. When you're talking Christmas, you know, then you're talking like
June.
6 to 7 weeks, the middle of November. We're pretty conservative on how fast we start stocking up for Q4, but especially like November is, you know, high time when sales really, really start to move. So you don't want to, and you know, with Christmas, they start putting stuff out in August or September.
Yeah, it's
so you
crazy
don't want
early.
It is. It's so crazy. And before the end of Q4, even I saw Valentine's Day stuff out all over. So I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's like almost 2 months away." It was just teeny tiny little display they tried to squeeze in the middle of all the Christmas.
Oh, they put it out so quick. I agree.
Yeah, they do. So it is time to start paying attention to that, just not time to like load up on everything.
So is that when they start having the sales then as well? Is that 2 to 3 weeks before is that when you're starting to see like the stores are going, "Okay, time to start selling this stuff off," and then that's the time for us to swoop in and grab them?
Exactly.
Okay.
If you buy right when they start putting stuff in the stores, you're going to pay full price for an item that's going to be on sale probably within a week or two. So, you know, obviously there's always every year, like especially around Christmas or Easter, major holidays, there are those items that are so popular. You know, if you don't buy them right away, sometimes you miss them. But 99% of the stuff you're walking by in the stores doesn't fit that bill. And if you pay full price, you set yourself up for failure when someone else gets it for cheaper. So when you're looking at those toys, especially when it comes to like short holidays, like you know, like Halloween. People think of Halloween as, you know, being the whole month of October, but really when it comes to buying for Halloween, it's really only the last 2 weeks in October. And by then, stores have had like 50% off on costumes, or, you know, buy one, get one 75%. I mean, it's just, they have these crazy deals going on. So if you buy in, you know, September, you probably paid full price for something that now when people are actually buying and the prices are, you know, starting to go up, everyone else is getting for cheaper. So you have to be careful about the when, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't look at whether or not something's popular in those early seasons. It can give you kind of a tip off to what's good. For instance, you know, this is just used in 2016 as an example. Elena of Avalor was one of the bigger, more popular Disney characters around the time for Halloween. So if you had bought her stuff right when it came out, those costumes and whatnot, would not have been good for you because you would have paid full price and would not have made that much money. But if you had been scanning and just been aware, you know, okay, Elena of Avalor, really popular, especially this one dress right here. When the sales came, you could have just right up to it. This is what I want. This is what I need. And then, you know, get right back out. And what that does, it lets you not only decrease your time in stores, but it lets you focus. You know, you can lose a lot of time and even get disheartened in certain sections if you're scanning everything. It seems like a great idea to just go in and scan everything on the shelves, But when you get 50 items in, suddenly you're like, I haven't found anything, and this is stupid, and I don't want to be here anymore.
What am
And
I doing with my life?
yeah, and so it's a great idea in your head when you first think about it, but you need something to keep you going. You always need that one item that you're like, all right, I know this is good. I know I can get this, and at least walk out with something today, if nothing else. So, being aware of the items early on is not even so much about buying them so much as it is find out what's popular, see what's doing well. Because what you'll find then is not only will you be able to focus when you get in there when those are on sale, but you'll find that leads you back to the regular toys. You might come across, say, an Angry Birds item that's doing really well, and you might think, oh, well, I didn't really know Angry Birds was doing that well right now. Let me go check the actual Angry Birds toys. FYI, they're not doing that well, so I'm not telling you to go.
Everybody go buy Angry Birds. But no, just kidding. Don't buy Angry Birds.
But if they were, it would be kind of an indication. Hey, let me go look back at the regular toys to see what those are doing, and you'll find that generally it's kind of a one-to-one thing. If a toy is really popular, a toy series, a toy brand, in the regular toy aisle, that it's all the normal stuff, it's probably going to translate to whatever season you're in right now. There are definitely certain things that have their moments, so to speak. For instance, Easter definitely pushes like collectibles because people want those Easter themed collectibles, like maybe pastel colors or something that just has that little maybe bunny ears attached to it. Just they're a little different, but at the same time, Halloween really pushes the more mature stuff, like the ninja sword that normally nobody buys for the Power Rangers. Well, it's Halloween, so it'd be really cool to have that ninja sword for my costume as I'm going out. So suddenly stuff like that starts to do well. But it's very rare to find one entire brand of toys that is doing amazing in the holiday and doing terrible in the actual toy section. It almost never happens. So it can kind of give you a tip off one-to-one, oh, this is doing well over here. Let me go check it in the holiday section, or vice versa, doing well in the holiday. Let me go look over in the regular toy section to see what's going on. And you'll be surprised at how many good things you find just from checking through the holiday stuff, even if you're not buying the holiday stuff at that time.
Right. That's super smart. Dude, I hope you guys are enjoying this stuff. I don't know. I don't know if you're done with number 2 yet, but I mean, just this information is amazing. So make sure and hit that thumbs up down below and say in the comments, let Beth and Seth know how much you appreciate this stuff. Cause I mean, it's just, I'm always blown away listening to you guys. That's why I'm kind of quiet during this. I'm just like, yeah. So I just wanted to throw that out there. You guys are doing awesome. So
well, we do have
all the info.
Yeah, we do have some tips for the seasons and kind of what to look for in general. I mean, we're not going to give look for this toy during Easter and look for this toy during Halloween, because honestly, it changes. Every season changes. What was good this Christmas was not going to be good the year before, and probably will be unheard of in the next one. It's kind of a year-to-year thing. But we can give some general ideas. When you come to spring, you got Easter, Valentine's, warming up, even things like umbrellas that normally you might not think of and they might not even be a toy necessarily in the toy category, but character umbrellas, like a character from the latest Disney movie or the latest popular Disney show on an umbrella. You'd be surprised at how many times it's really popular, just because it's attached to that character. So what happens is when these seasons come around, you get to like Valentine's Day, and everyone knows Batman, everyone knows Star Wars, everyone knows Transformers. But what happens is there's all these other super popular toys that you may have never heard of that come around that time, and they also have like Valentines that are in the little Valentine section. And so you as the parent may be like, I have no idea what this is. But if your kid knows what it is, then it matters. So, you need to be aware of those things. So when you come around to Valentine's Day, think Valentines. And by Valentines, I mean like the little Valentine's cards. I would say think candy, but in all honesty, that's a grocery thing, and you're going to have to be dedicated because there's so much new candy that comes around Valentine's Day. But think also very, especially girls, collectible type stuff. Just as an example, Shopkins last year had Valentine Shopkins. Incredibly popular, just insanely popular, because they were little Shopkins shaped like chocolate. and it was really just an excuse for Shopkins to get more of your money, but they didn't care. The kids wanted them. So, things like that do really well. And then when you move on, you get past Valentine's Day, of Easter coming up. Again, candy, but this time, there's usually a lot of like, I don't even know how to describe it. You got like the Easter eggs that have, have stuff inside of them. You'd be surprised at how many of those character themed Easter egg type stuff does amazing. Like, just outstanding. People want Marvel Easter eggs or Angry Birds Easter egg. Just things that you would think to yourself, who cares? It's just an Easter egg. The kids care. They care a lot. And so they move that product. Yeah. And so when you get to Easter, you're looking at, eggs. Generally, that's not as much a collectible thing. But at the same time, little Easter egg basket type stuff like Hot Wheels or tiny little items that, you can put in an Easter egg basket. Sometimes it's not even the stuff that's necessarily up with the actual like Easter egg displays type stuff, but it'll be like the regular items that are just smaller. If you get like a My Little Pony, it'll be those tiny My Little Ponies that you probably walk by 99% of the time. But now, because it's that time of year, parents want to make sure that they get something to put inside of those Easter eggs. And so they will get those kinds of things because they don't want to give their kid candy, And so those are the things they'll take off then. But then as you get past spring, you get to summer. Outdoor toys just go insane. Water, especially, slip and slides, pools, floaters. I mean, just anything that has to do with pool, especially if it has characters attached to them, do really well. But beyond that, there's always stuff that you've probably never heard of, but that the college age probably do know. Things like Can Jam, things like that. Those kinds of things start to do really well too, and those things tend to be in the toy category, even if you would find them in the sports section. So always be aware during the summer season that there's a lot of things in the toy category that aren't necessarily, you wouldn't think this is for kids. You would think, well, this is like an adult game that, adults will go to the pool to play together, but it's going to be in the toy category because it's still a game. So, make sure you check, because there's always sales on those things too. And then as you get closer to the end of summer, you get like to back to school, and that's a whole season into itself, which is not necessarily toys and everything there, but if you understand characters and toys going into that season, you set yourself up amazing to do well in the back to school season, because kids love their characters on all their back to school stuff.
Everything,
If you knew what Shimmer and Shine was last year, you were set up great for the back to school season because you understood something that the kids wanted before you got around to the actual season when everyone was buying it all. So understanding the toys helps even in those non-toy seasons, because characters translate everywhere. I mean, kids love their characters on everything. And then obviously when you get to fall, you got Halloween, which again, that's, masks, costumes, all those weaponry and accessories that you never really pay attention to. Now all of a sudden every kid wants that. They want to look like their latest princess or the latest action hero that they love on TV. So they go to those things like those little like $7 accessory sets that you see with all the Disney princess items. Stuff that during the year is not really doing that well, but during the Halloween season just takes off because they want that to complete the set. And usually the most authentic stuff is the toy. It's not the costume stuff. The costume stuff's usually cheap and generic, but you go to the toy and it looks just like the one that they have on TV, and the kids, that's what they want. They want to look just like it. Then you get past Halloween, and in all honesty, Thanksgiving's not really a toy holiday. So if you're looking at Thanksgiving, looking at like, what does this give me? Not a lot, not really a toy holiday. But the good news is Thanksgiving is Black Friday time, Christmas time. That's when all the toys are
time still,
At that point, if you know your toys, you are in the best business in the world, because it's almost like printing money around that time of year. So, you got all these seasons, and those are just kind of general tips on what to look for in the areas. There's always nuance to it, obviously. For instance, football stuff does better later in the year than it does earlier in the year, even though it's an outdoor sport. I mean, there's nuance to that, but that's really the kind of stuff you want to look for. But there's also the other side of it, which is you need to be careful with what you buy that's seasonal, because when you get past the season, most of it tends to die off. So post Valentine's Day, most of your Valentine cards are not going to be worth anything.
Nothing, yeah.
And the thing is, with character stuff, probably not going to be worth anything next year either, because it's going to be new characters that everybody's into. You might get lucky, but for the most part, it changes year to year. So it's really important not to overextend yourself when it comes to just seasonal items. You need to be aware of them. You need to make them a part of your inventory, but you also need to be careful to not make them your inventory. The only time you can really do that is during Q4, when it's just general toys. But that's not quite the same, because that's still the general toys that you could have sold anytime throughout the year. When it's something that's specific to a holiday or a season, you need to be careful with it, because the vast majority of them do not do well post-season.
So you got to get rid of it. Once you have it, you got to get it out the door.
Yep. And a lot of people make the mistake of holding on. Well, I'm going to wait that one more week to see if I can get it. You know, if I can get my Easter eggs sold, you know, the next week. Can you? You might be able to, especially with Easter eggs, because, you know, they're candy usually. So candy usually does okay. But, you know, maybe I should use a different example. Easter themed Hot Wheel cars.
Right.
You know, you might think, let me just wait one more week. Well, that week might be the difference between being ranked 5,000 and ranked 150,000 in toys.
Right.
It can be just a huge change, which isn't to say you're going to end up losing money on all of it, but, you know, it's kind of like pushing yourself to the edge of the cliff for no reason. Just don't do it. You know, try to sell everything you can right away. And one thing we always try to imprint in people is don't hold your holiday stuff, you know, unless you plan to hold it until the next time the holiday comes around, because it just, most of it does not do well. Yes, there's always those outliers that still do okay afterwards, but the other 99% that you've never heard of, there's a reason you never heard of it. It's because no one was proud to have held on to that item afterwards. You know?
Yeah, that's very good. You know, and one of the things that you said, I think that was really important too, is that, you know, you got to Thanksgiving and you're like, not really a toy, you know, holiday or whatever. But you said, if you've done your homework and you've learned and you've bought toys throughout the year, by the time it gets to Thanksgiving, you're going to be a rock star, because you're going to know all the stuff. You're going to know your trends. You're going to know what's good. So I think that was a huge tidbit that you threw in there as well, between all the other great ones. But I mean, just amazing stuff. So was that it for number 2? We have, just in case you guys are just getting here, we're doing the 5 tips for selling toys year round. The tip number 1 was keeping up with the trends. Tip number 2 was keep up with the holiday and seasons. And was there any more to add to that, or are we going to number 3?
Nope, we're ready for number 3.
All right.
All right. Number 3 is to be smart with your ranks. And I know when we had done our Q4 chat with you that we had talked about ranks then too, but the thing, especially in the toy category, ranks are so different during the majority of the year compared to what they are during Q4, that we thought it was important to talk about it again, just because you know, especially when we first started selling close to Q4. So, you know, we just assumed like, yeah, toys like just sell that fast all year round. And they do sell fast. They just don't sell quite that fast. So, so yeah, it's kind of maybe a culture shock if you started during Q4 and then you're still trying to sell toys the rest of the year. It's a little bit different to get used to the change in velocity for a sales rank. And that's what we always say for that. Like especially one of the examples that we give sometimes for in our Q4 groups is we'll say like a toy ranked 100 might sell, you know, 50 a day or 100 a day, but during Q4 it'll sell like 100 an hour instead. And so so that's the difference kind of between Q4 and the rest of the year. Yes, those ranks are still really good, but they just don't have quite the sell through velocity that they do during Q4. So it's really important to pay attention to your ranks during the rest of the year. We try to keep ours under 100,000 usually. We're all about fast turn inventory. We like to get our stuff in and get it back out and put that money back in our pockets. But we usually, I would say most of the time we try to stay under 50,000 for a rank, which I know can sound kind of low. Like, you know, a lot of times people say I have a hard time finding something, but if you think about it, that means there's 50,000 opportunities in that, you know. So that's a lot. That's a lot of stuff. And not all of that is going to be good. Most of it probably is not going to be good for resale. But you know, there is tons of opportunity out there. So so it is possible to find a lot of good stuff for in that 50,000 and under, but at least under 100,000. And especially if for all the beginners, when you're first starting out, you really want your inventory turning over faster.
Right.
We had some people in our Q4 group last year that had started selling earlier in the year and had bought things that were at a higher rank and were frustrated because they weren't selling. And they, you know, they should have sold under, you know, the guidelines that they were following. It made sense that it would be moving. But because we know how the actual ranks and toys work, we knew that, you know, a rank of 500,000 is not going to sell through that quickly.
Right.
So, so, you know, it sounds good. It was in the top, what, 1% or 5% of the category. And so it sounded like it would be good, but we know from experience that it's not. So that's why we try to tell everybody, you know, stay under 100,000 for sure, especially when you're a beginner. And, you know, Seth and I, we do buy things that are 200, 250,000, but we have other criteria that we're looking at and we're experienced at it. So we never ever coach anyone to do that. You know, if they have a specific item and they're asking us about it, then we can look at it and tell them. But we would never go out and just say, oh, you should just go ahead and buy things up to 500,000, because it could be 500,000 because of an anomaly, because it sold once to somebody and its regular rank is 3 million
or something. Yeah, exactly. One sell can change everything.
Right.
Yeah. And I know what you're talking about. Like there are those outliers. You guys are great coaches to be like, we're not going to teach you, even if the 1% or 10% or whatever is 500,000, we're not going to teach you to go for that just because you're going to be able to find under 500,000. It's like do under 100,000. And you guys do outliers because, you know, maybe something's hard to find. Maybe there's not FBA sellers. Maybe it's just something that was sold years ago and just happens to still be on the shelf, you know, or whatever. So yeah, I think that's awesome that you do that. I mean, that's the way to go, because you want to keep that cash flow going.
Yeah, and it's extremely important now with the changes Amazon's been making to their storage fees, especially later in the year. If you have a lot of slow-moving items in there, it's getting to the point where even if you only have them for a couple months, you're going to start losing most of your profit in those couple months if it's in their FBA. So it's extremely important now to make sure your items are turning over as fast as you can get them to. I mean, it's not like a prerogative that if you can't move it in a week, you shouldn't buy it. But at the same time, if you're looking at holding on to it for 6 months, you might need to rethink whether or not that's worth your money, because that's not just 6 months of waiting. That's 6 months of fees if it's in their FBA. You know, that's 6 months where you could have sold other items and turned your money over and bought more and kept growing. And so, you know, keeping under the 100,000 rank is not so much even that there's nothing above the 100,000 to buy. It's just that under 100,000, you keep yourself safe from all those mistakes. You know, and we have people who are in our groups that we've taught, some people we've taught for years who talked about, you know, things they bought at 150,000, 200,000 that they sold. And, you know, as you get more experience, you get those things and you kind of see, okay, you know, I might wait a month on this, but I'm going to sell it and make my money. But if you're just starting and you make it your business to have all your inventory, this 200,000, 300,000, 400,000, you find yourself with no money because nothing's turning around, nothing's selling. And because toys works differently than some of the other categories. There are, you know, categories like home where 500,000 is really not that big a deal, even though home doesn't have that many more items than toys overall. The percentage of things that sell quickly is just so much higher in home than it is in toys. In toys, if the stuff that's really moving, the stuff that's popular is really under 100,000. If it's not under 100,000, that's because no one's really looking for it. And so when you look at that versus something like home, where, you know, at 500,000, it's still pretty consistently selling once, twice a week, maybe. It's just a different ball game, and it's something that people need to be careful with, especially if they're new to the category. Just tempering the desire for profit against will it sell, because it's really, really easy to find things that are ranked crazy high that sell for a lot of money. Not difficult at all. I could go out and fill a cart with them at any store across the country, but I will make more money by going in and filling my cart up with things that will sell within the next few weeks, selling, getting money back, and then going out and buying more things than I ever would if I were to go get a bunch of those items that would, you know, take me 6 months to sell through. So it's very important to make sure your ranks stay low. And with the way that Amazon's changing their fees, they're being aggressive about it. They're not mincing their words. They're making their whole perspective on how they want their warehouses to work plain and clear. They don't want your inventory. And by that, I mean, they don't want it sitting there for 6 months. That's not ideal to them. They want to make sure everybody's stuff is moving, because if they don't, they become they go from being kind of a warehouse to being a junkyard, where you got all this stuff that nobody's buying. It's just sitting there. So they're being really aggressive with how they hit these storage fees, and making sure you're on constant turnover is now becoming more important than ever, especially during the Q4 time, when the fees go up to just they go pretty crazy. We know people who had tens of thousands of dollars in fees. Now, granted, these are people selling huge big numbers. So I mean, I'm not telling you, like, you know, if you're a new seller, you need to worry about that.
That's still a percentage to them, but that's like $10,000.
But at the same time, you know, that's nothing to sneeze at. That's not, you know, you don't just say, oh, hey, whatever, $10,000. So
there goes the car.
You know, it is it's something that people need to be aware of when they're looking at the ranks. And in fact, one thing that we always tell people is, you know, the rank is more important than the brand. You know, people can get this idea in their head: Transformers is popular, therefore Transformers, whether it's ranked 300,000 or 3,000, Transformers. But it's more important for your item to be ranked well than it is for your item to be part of a popular brand. You're going to come across things, especially if you do toys for a long time, that you've never heard of before. I sell things all the time that if you had asked me the day before I found them what they were, I don't know. I've never heard of that before. But you'll scan it and you'll be like, wow, that's ranked 15,000 in toys. I've never heard of this before.
I need to learn about it.
Doesn't matter. Somebody's heard of it before and somebody likes it. So that's all you need to care about. But if you're looking for, well, Pokemon's popular, therefore I need to just really focus on Pokemon, what you'll find is there will be a decent amount of Pokemon stuff that's good, and the majority of it's bad. Just like it is with Transformers. Decent amount of it's good, majority of it's bad. Everything's like that. Even some of the most popular brands in the world, like right now, currently, at the time of this recording, Shopkins is one of the most popular brands in the world. But even as we go forward, Shopkins is slowly starting to get those items that are not ranked that well, that are ranked over 100,000. I can't think of anything off the top of my head that would be like a bad buy at the moment with Shopkins in terms of rank. But we're getting to the place where a year from now, it's probably going to be common to see things that are 200, 300,000. And so if you think to yourself, well, Shopkins is popular because, you know, a year from now, Shopkins probably will still be popular. And there will be lots of things that are really popular in it. But if you're just thinking it's Shopkins, therefore good, you're going to get yourself stuck with items because the rank is more important than the brand. You don't need to care whether or not you as a person would like the item in front of you. That's not important. What is important is that somebody out there likes it enough to make it ranked 5,000 in toys. That's all that matters. That's all that needs to matter to you. Keep your ranks low, even if it means you go to brands that you've never heard of and you scan things that, as far as you knew, did not exist prior to the time you scan them. It's more important to keep your ranks low than it is to go to those brands that are really popular.
That's huge. I hope you guys, you know, I should always say, I should like preempt the whole show with like, get ready to take notes, because the people that I have on here are such experts, like all this stuff. I'm just like, yeah. I mean, I've been doing this a while and I'm just like, Yeah, I'm learning so much stuff. So make sure and hit that thumbs up and everything below, guys. I appreciate what you guys are doing. Was there any more about the Be Smart with ranks, or were we getting close to the end on that one?
No,
Okay.
I think that was it. That was it
Okay.
on that one too.
Okay, so real quick, I want to let you guys know that when I first spoke with Beth about doing this, we were talking about just doing 3 things. And so, but the last 2 things are so good that I really think that we should have them included. But I was kind of thinking we're at the 50-minute mark already. And I was thinking that it would be a good time now to go ahead and talk about your course and coaching. And then we'll go ahead and finish off the 4th and 5th, whatever we have time for. Okay? Does that sound good to you guys?
Sure,
Okay.
that's great.
Perfect. So if you want to just go ahead and start talking about, let people know about what your course is and what your coaching is, what you have available, that would be perfect.
Okay. And I think you're going to have the link for that
Yes,
information and the coupon code and stuff. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I will actually, I'll say it real quick. The link is dollarmoves.com/toy coaching. And that'll be below, and I'll put it in the chat as well, but it's dollarmoves.com/toy coaching. And the special Dollar Moves discount, you want to use coupon code ROB2017. That's all one word, just ROB2017. So, okay, thanks so much for saying that. And I'll put this in the chat.
Okay. Yeah, a few years ago, I actually created a course called Making Big Profits with Toys outside of Q4 that essentially walks everyone through the steps, the thought process that Seth and I have when we're looking at toys. It takes you from the very, very beginning research stages all the way to, navigating through clearance and holidays and all the different stuff. And goes into a lot more detail about some of the things that we've talked about tonight. And about 2 years ago, Seth and I started forming a coaching group around that. And so what we do is twice a year, because we do have our Q4 group, but that's totally different and not based on, regularly selling toys. 2 times a year in the spring and in the summer, we will have a coaching group for 3 months at a time. And what we do is we basically hold your hand through navigating the toy world. We host it on Facebook. We're in the group every day. Sometimes we try to take weekends off so that we get a little bit of a break. We have a lot of training and extra tips that we put in there. We put bolos in. We talk about the things that we're buying. We talk about, and we have a lot of people who come back for every group that we have, actually, because we always center it around what's currently going on. We're not going to teach about the super popular toys that were last year. We're going to talk about exactly what's going on during those 3 months that we are hosting the group. So generally speaking, in the spring, our group will center a lot around clearance and making sure that you don't get burned by toy clearance. So that happens to a lot of people, I know. And so that's a huge time for clearance. We'll talk about Easter. It starts February 1st, that group. So we do cover a little bit of Valentine's Day, but it's kind of getting a little bit late for that. We talk about going into the summertime and getting ready for that. And then for our summer group, we start on June 1st, and we'll cover everything that's going on in the summer. We cover back to school, which is actually only it's the second largest retail sales time of the year, second only to Q4. So
wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's huge money-making time. So,
right.
So we do talk a lot about that during our summer group. So we try to make sure that during each group that we're running, we're really focusing on what's going on right then, to really help our group members. And we, once a month, we do a Zoom call, which is like a live conference call, so we can take questions. We also, obviously we are in the group all the time answering questions that anybody has. And every Friday we have Friday Q&A. So we have like a post where that they can post their questions, and over the weekend we'll record answers for them. And it just gives us a chance to kind of give a little more in-depth talking about answering for a question than it is to actually type something out. Although I like to type stuff out, so
I love the question thing. Yeah, it's nice.
And so, yeah, Seth does a lot of videos we kind of complement each other because Seth likes to do a lot of training videos. I would rather write the stuff out. So we kind of work together good that way. And then during our Q4 group in 2016, we started a new thing where that we actually did Facebook Live videos of our sourcing trips. And so we took our group members along virtually.
That was cool, by the way.
When we went to Toys R Us, thank you.
Yeah.
We had a lot. Seth and I were like, this seems like it would be really boring. Like, it's a lot of walking through the store and just looking at the shelves. But we had so much good feedback about how great that it was and how it helped people to really get a sense of exactly what our process was when we were shopping. So we're actually going to start incorporating that going forward in our coaching group. So you'll get to go along with us, just like you were there.
Yeah, that was huge because that, like what you just said, just like you were there, because you're literally like with them while they're grabbing the toys. Like you're seeing what they're looking at and what's good, what's going home. I mean, it's amazing. It's like, it's virtual shop. It's like armchair shopping with the toy experts, and you don't even have to leave your house. It's just like, this is good. Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, it was a lot of fun to do that. So I'm the camera operator and Seth is the shopper. So I had to be kind of careful not to get other customers in there, which was a little more difficult during Q4 than I think it will be the rest of the year in our Toys R Us. So
I'm sure.
But yeah, so it was a lot of fun, and you know, that's what we do. And so you know, we get a lot of feedback on the fact that we're very present with our coaching members. We really want to see them succeed. We really care about what's going on with their business. If they're struggling, we try really hard to create a positive and encouraging atmosphere so that even if someone's struggling and they come in and they're like, I cannot find anything, you know, they don't get attacked. They don't, you know, nobody's like, well, I just found 50 things, you know, because when you're struggling and you're not finding anything and then somebody posts and says, well, I just found 50 things, you just think, well, what's wrong with me?
What am I doing?
So, right. So, so there's none of that. You know, we're there to help, and, you know, we're just so proud of the group members that we have, because we have some that have been there from the very beginning, and they chime in and they start encouraging and they give tips. And so it's really just a great, fun place to be.
Right.
So, and plus selling toys is cool.
Yeah, right. And fun. I mean, it gives you a reason to go into Toys R Us. I mean, I dig it. So
right.
And you know, that's really a testament to your coaching, is that you do get the repeat people. You're getting the same people that were in Q4. I mean, you've already got those people that are coming into it. And so, I mean, people aren't going to spend the money if it's not giving them back a return. And so, I mean, it is huge. It was so fun to just kind of watch from the sidelines, like watching people like just grow through the Q4 group, you know, and I know that the way that you teach, it's going to continue to happen. And how cool is that to be able to have the experts telling you what the good stuff is out there? I mean, that's huge. I mean, just in that alone.
Yeah. And we do try to take a lot of the work out of it. And, you know, for anybody who's in our group. And we also, one thing that, like I said earlier, we have so many people that come in who were afraid to go into Toys R Us and who end up really loving to go in there. So we take what is essentially a category with millions of possibilities and we break it down so it's manageable.
Right.
So yeah, so we try to.
It's very much about teaching you to fish rather than just throwing you the fish while you're sitting in the group. I mean, we always have, you know, some bolos, or, you know, this is the next thing to look at. You know, people who have been in our groups over the last year have been people who were first in line for a lot of the most popular toys that you've seen in stores. I'm trying to think what's happened over the last 3 months. PJ Masks, Shimmer and Shine, Wild Pets, Live Animals. I mean, there's been a lot over the last few months that people in our group were some of the first people there. But at the same time, our goal is to make it so that once you leave the group, even if you never come back and we never see you again, you're still able to sell in the toy category. You're still able to find stuff on your own. You know, we want to make it set up so that you don't need us in 6 months. You know, if you come back, because we have, you know, we have good stuff all the time, that's great. But there are guys that we teach in the group who come back every group, and they do more than I do in toys. I know they do more than I do in toys because I've heard their numbers, and I think to myself, why do you guys come back? But they say, you know, you guys always know what's up and what's next. And but at the same time, I know that if they didn't come back, they'd still be all right. And that, to me, that means that we did our job. We taught them, and that's always the goal, is to make sure that people can, once they're done with the group, or even during the group, that they can understand toys and understand what they're doing when they're in that category, so that they don't feel overwhelmed when they walk into a Toys R Us, or even like a Walmart. I mean, it can be even intimidating to go into a Walmart if you're not really a toy shopper, because even then you still have 6-7 aisles that you got to go down. But we like to make sure that, you know, it feels less like a chore and more like a scavenger hunt for you. Then, you know, it's fun. It's fun to go in there and find those things. And, you know, lately with all the changes at Amazon, such as restrictions and, you know, changes to fees and all that, you know, we take all that into account. You know, we don't forget about it, especially during Q4, the last Q4, when all those restrictions took place. We were aware of them. We tried to make sure that everybody was able to get something, because, you know, we had people who were unrestricted in things. We had people who were restricted in almost everything, and we wanted to make sure that people who were restricted were still able to get stuff out of it. And I
got to watch that too. I got to watch you guys help people that had either bought something that was restricted wrongly. You're like, no, get a hold of Amazon. That one is like, because it was restricting the toy instead of the brand or something like that. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff like that going on throughout the whole time, and you guys held them by the hand and helped them to take care of this stuff and move their inventory. So that was huge.
Yeah, it's kind of a new landscape in toys going forward, just with the way they've kind of approached it with restrictions. You know, we don't know what Amazon's going to do in 3 months or 6 months or 9 months. You know, we can only guess, but we do know that understanding toys and having a presence in the category sets you up for when they do make those changes. People who were in our groups for the last year or two, they were really not restricted in anything when those restrictions came down, because they were already selling all that stuff and Amazon grandfathered them in. So going forward, it could be just as important to have your finger in other brands and other things that may get restricted down the line. Do we know if they're going to? No, we're not saying like, you know, sky's falling and in 6 months everything's restricted or anything like that. But
better get in it now while it's there. It's available.
If you got your presence now, If you got your presence now and you're establishing yourself in the category, if they do that again, you're ready. You're there and you're set to take advantage, because people who weren't restricted were able to take advantage of those restrictions. Not saying that Amazon necessarily did it the right way. I disagree with a lot of the ways that they went about it, but there was still opportunity there for the people who had been putting in the work, who had been learning toys and been selling that. And that's going to be important going forward. And one of the things we're really focusing on as we go forward with our teaching is, you know, how to take advantage, not just of what is restricted right now that you might be unrestricted in, but also setting yourself up for the future if those things come around again. Because, you know, everyone laments something like Shopkins is restricted, but guess what? There's always a new Shopkins. You know, there's always a new Pokemon, or maybe not a new Nerf. Nerf's been around for a while, but something like that. There's always something new that's coming around. And if you're set up for that new stuff, then when it comes time again for them to restrict, you're in the gold. You know, you're there, you're ready to make the money that other people who maybe weren't in the category doing it right weren't ready for. So that's one of the things that we're going to be focusing on, especially this year with the restrictions now, is helping people find the things that they can still sell, even if they're brand new to the category, even if they can't sell all those things that were restricted last year. Still setting you up so that, you know, over the next year, you can be really hitting all these new things that come out, because it's essentially a motto of mine. There's always something new. There's always something new.
Yeah, and some of that other stuff will kind of force you to get into that. But that's one of the things, is that, you know, that power of the group being there to be able to help out and keep each other, you know, even with the people in the group, you know, being able to see, well, this isn't working or this is working. And then you guys coming in and helping out. I mean, it was so huge. And one of the things you were talking about, you're talking about these sellers that are doing better than you, that continue to stick with you guys in your coaching. And you're like, I don't know why they do it. Well, I do. It's because people that are doing well in their business, that want their business to do well, they know that investing in their business is going to pay back. And that's why they're there. Because if your stuff wasn't working, I mean, you guys are nice and everything, but if your stuff wasn't working, they aren't going to sign up for it over and over, you know?
I would hope not.
Yeah. And if they want to just throw money around, I mean, they could just send it all over. I mean, there's all kinds of places. Well, that's awesome. So, was there any more about it, about the coaching that you didn't get to? I'm seeing here the having the weekly buy list. Is that correct in the coaching as well?
Yes, and I did want to mention too that if they sign up for the coaching, they get the course automatically, which was updated last year, and we're actually going to add a few more lessons this year. So that's something sometimes people don't realize, that the course automatically comes with the coaching. So they think they have to buy it separately, but okay. Or they can buy the course separately on its own if they don't want to do the coaching.
Okay, yeah, at a smaller amount, the course is more of a do-it-yourself kind of. You guys have put a nuts and bolts of how to do selling toys year-round, and it's all condensed into that. And then the coaching is to, like, right now kind of stuff and hold you by the hand, help you out kind of. Would that be correct? The coaching is going to focus. The course is more like, this is how to do it any time of the year, and the coaching is more like, let us tell you how to do it specifically right now. So it's, that's kind of the difference. And yes, we are doing a buy list. There will be a buy list every week that'll come out. And so the VA, we've been told the VA may not have all toys, but I've said I wanted to make sure that she concentrated on toys and at least other kids stuff, which is actually number 5. We'll talk about that when we get to number 5. I know there were times I was like, "Ooh, we could dig into some stuff." It's like, no, we're getting there. We're going to get to that.
I know. I thought Seth was going to ruin number 4 right there when he was talking.
I wasn't going to ask the question because I'm like, yeah, we could go in. I mean, you guys are giving so much info, so much content. I sure appreciate it. And I mean, was there more that you wanted to add to the course at all, to what's going on with it or anything like that?
If anybody has any questions, I think I tried to make sure that I covered it, but if anybody has any questions, they can go ahead and ask, and we're happy to answer any questions about it.
Do we want to take a question right now? Because we do have one question relating to it. Is that all right?
Okay.
Take a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Barton asked, he lives in a small town without a toy store. Does the coaching work with OA as well? Now, I don't know if by toy store you're meaning something like Toys R Us, if you just mean like any store, like a Walmart or a Target, because in our eyes, every store that has toys is a toy store. So, I mean, it depends on what you mean by toy store. But in general, as long as you have something that sells toys that are, brand toys, not like the generic, like little squirt guns or things like that. Yeah, as long as it's like the actual brand toys, it'll translate. We have people who live in small towns, and they may do circuits to bigger towns in the area, or they may stay in their own town and just buy there in small stuff and try to translate it to OA. All this stuff does translate to OA, but it's definitely not the same. It's definitely okay. So you do have a Target, Walmart, and Marshalls. Those are 3 amazing starts right there. Those are like 3 of the big ones that we talk about and make kind of focuses. And obviously a Toys R Us is an advantage. I'm not going to pretend like not having a Toys R Us is a good thing for selling in the toy category. But at the same time, you probably don't live too far away from a Toys R Us. So I'm sure you could, eventually get there. But it does work for OA. All the stuff we talk about, these things remain popular whether they're online or in the store. It doesn't really matter. But it is a different ball game playing OA versus RA. It's a different process. It's a different way of approaching it. So our teaching is mainly RA, but we do go over OA. We do talk about OA and kind of how to switch some things around to best work for you. There are certain advantages to RA that you're not going to get OA, but at the same time, there's certain advantages OA that you're not going to get RA. So it's not like a one or the other necessarily that works for both. But, from what I see, if you have a Target, Walmart, and Marshalls, you're not quite as without toys as you might think you are.
Right.
A lot of people think, Walmart, it's my grocery store. And it is. But trust me, it can also become one of your favorite toy stores. In fact, the last time I went on a shopping trip, I got about $5,000 of stuff. And it was all from Walmart. I only went to 3 Walmarts. It was about $5,000, and it was just last week. And it was only Walmart. That was all I went to. So it's definitely not the end of the world to not have like a Toys R Us in your area, because there's so many other opportunities.
And that's the other thing, like you guys talk about, the Targets and like find this was found at Target, or this is going on at Walmart. Like you guys talked about that a lot. I don't know if you do it throughout the year, but definitely through Q4, you were talking about a lot of that stuff too, and the specific ones to different stores and stuff like that. So, I think that guy, he should be just fine, huh?
Yeah. And we do talk a lot about exactly where we're finding things. And also the buy list is generally mostly OA. So that would help too. Yeah.
Okay, real quick, I want to make sure everyone understands what RA and OA are. To us, it's just like we get it. RA stands for retail arbitrage, which means you're going to go and drive to a store and buy something to bring home. OA means online arbitrage, which means you're going to go online, find a product, have it sent to you, and then send it into Amazon to sell. So when they were saying all that stuff, like I got it, and I'm like, gosh, I hope if a new person's listening, they're gonna be like RA, OA, OA, RA, RA, I don't know. So just so you know, RA just means you're gonna go to the store, and OA means you're gonna find it on your computer. So, but as they were saying, it works for everything. So.
And we also talk a lot too, and give tips on when to merchant fulfill stuff. So, and if they haven't merchant fulfilled before, we help them through that process and teach them how to do that. But also, there's a lot of times with toys that, toys we always say is a get in and get out category. So it's not usually the kind of category where you get in and you just stay and you sell the same thing for years and years and years, like you can in some other categories. Which is kind of intimidating for some people, but that's part of what we think is fun, because it's always changing, an always changing landscape. But yes, there are definitely benefits to doing merchant fulfilled items. And so we talk about that a lot. If we find something, we'll be like, this is really good for merchant fulfilled. You should be doing this merchant fulfilled, not sending it FBA. And doing that, we've helped a lot of our group members to get in on some of the higher profit before that people were able to get their FBA items in there. So, so yeah, those are all things that we talk about during our coaching groups, no matter when that it is, actually.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And Beth made it so that this video actually, it basically encompasses any time of the year that they're open for their coaching. My link will take you to the current one. So you can go to DollarMoves.com/toy coaching and learn, and hear about or read about all the stuff that was just spoken about. I know we've said a lot, and a lot's coming at you, and there's so many benefits that come along with the coaching. So you can go to DollarMoves.com/toy coaching. You can sign up there and see all the stuff that was said, but I don't think she missed anything. They both got it right on. And make sure that you use the code ROB2017 and you'll get $50 off the coaching. So that's ROB2017 when you're signing up, and you'll get $50 off the coaching. And that will work anytime that the coaching is available. So awesome. And I mean, I'm telling you, the people were loving the coaching, and these guys are, like they said, they're available if you have any questions or anything like that beyond that. But I want to go ahead and start getting back into it here. And unless you guys had any more that you wanted to finish off, I think that we kind of covered everything.
I see a couple questions.
Oh, okay.
There's a couple we'll wait till the end, but one was asked, how long does the coaching last? And 3 months. It's a 3-month coaching group. For like the next one's February to the end of April. And then the one after that is June to
Yeah.
the end of August, and then October to the end of December. So the 3-month coaching groups with a month off. And during that time, you know, you have access to everything, but you also have access to everything you learned after the period as well. We don't like, you know, shut the group down and then kick everybody out once it's over. You can always go back in, look at whatever was in the, you know, the group before, and you know, that information all stays there.
That's very cool. I didn't know how that worked after the fact, but yeah, that's cool. And it's cool. So if you're watching this video at a later time and you're not able to hear it live, you just heard all the different times when you can sign up and when they will. But are you only open like a month or 2 weeks before coaching starts, or?
No, we usually we open it up. I would say I try hard to get it open about 3 to 4 weeks ahead of time before that it actually starts, because when we have current group members, we give them a big discount off of the next group if they want to join. So I try to have it done before the current group is over. So that's my goal. It doesn't always get done, but that's what I try for. And then also, you know, the thing about our groups, because yes, we do have people who join later. Like if you were watching this in January and you didn't make it to the February 1st deadline to join that next group, but you made it in like in March or whatever, you can always go back and look at everything that has been said and watch all the videos, and you know, we have the Q&A recorded, the Zooms are recorded and available for playback, and so all those things are available to you to take advantage of. The only thing that you technically would have missed is just live coaching, you know, to ask a question, say on Tuesday afternoon or something, you know, that you had a question. That's really essentially the only thing that they would miss by joining a little bit later.
Awesome. So then you can join at any time, but preferably before it starts so that you get all the live goodness, but you have access to everything. So one last time, I want to tell you how to find it. You can go to dollarmoves.com/toy coaching. That's dollarmoves.com/TOYCOACHING. And make sure you use the coupon code ROB2017 to get the $50 discount for the coaching. So awesome. Yes. Thank you guys so much. I know like we were wanting to go an hour and you guys always bring the good stuff. And so I want to get back to the 5 tips, but if you guys, I mean, it shouldn't be hard to see that these guys know their stuff. They care about the people that they coach. So go check it out. If it's of any interest to you, if you can see it helping your business, check it out. You're not going to be disappointed. So the 5 tips for selling toys year round, we had tip number 1 was keep up with trends. Tip number 2 is keep up with holiday and seasons. And tip number 3 is to be smart with your ranks. So we are going into tip number 4.
Tip number 4, the one that Seth started to give away when we were talking a few minutes ago, is dealing with restrictions, which has been, I think, the biggest frustration that we've seen with Amazon in recent years, really, because it affected not only new sellers, but it affected experienced sellers. I know when the restrictions first came down that I was restricted in a bunch of stuff like Legos and Nerf and Pokemon and all things that I had been selling. And Seth was like, I'm not restricted in anything. And I was like, oh, what is up with that? So, yeah, after a few weeks, they grandfathered me in and realized that I was okay. And I was able to sell all of that stuff. So, nice. Yeah, so it was just that short time little glitch there, but still, you know, even somebody who's been selling for years in all of those brands, I still got shut down for a short amount of time. So I think that has just been something super frustrating for just across the board for all sellers right now. So that's why we wanted to talk about that a little bit. And you know, like Seth said, that is something that we're going to deal with heavily in our group. We dealt with it heavily in our Q4 group. You know, and he talked about grandfathering, which is what I just talked about too, that, you know, even though I was shut down at first, eventually they realized that I had a history selling in that brand. And so they allowed me to come in. that usually will happen, not always, but usually. And so, you know, we heard a lot of people from our coaching groups that said, you know, they weren't restricted, and most of the brands, just because they had been following us and they had sold through all those things during that year. So that was a really good thing. And we were glad for that, but we also had a lot of people that were restricted, and I know that it was so frustrating. And we actually had somebody who felt like just so overwhelmed, and she said, I just feel like I'm restricted from everything that you guys are talking about. So she decided to put together a list, and she actually found out that she wasn't restricted in nearly as many things as she thought. And she said,
really?
yeah, she said, once I started to take absolutely every specific item that you guys had talked about, and I compared it to what I was restricted in, she said, I realized like I had more than enough things that I was able to sell.
Cool.
So that's something to keep in mind, you know, even though it can feel overwhelming and it can feel like I'm just shut down everywhere I look, everywhere I turn, I'm gated. You know, there still are going to be things that you're able to sell. And so, so that's something to remember, and try not to get too discouraged by that, because if you just, it's just another obstacle that you just have to run over. So, you know,
Right.
and there's always going to be those things in business. And if you want to keep on going and you want to keep on growing, you have to run over those obstacles and not let them stop you. So, so yeah, that's one thing that we really talk about a lot. And we know that that's going to be a big thing going forward this year. Is dealing with those restrictions. We weren't sure if they were going to start to fall off or not. We hoped that they were going to fall off, but so far it doesn't really look like it. But so we'll see as the year goes on and progresses, and see how that ends up going. But so we had a couple of tips to work your way through those restrictions. One was the grandfathering, to watch and see if there's something that you've sold before. Another thing is to pay attention to the actual brand, which is one thing that you mentioned too, Rob, that you had seen in our Q4 group, because we were finding it was so sort of funny, also frustrating. But during Q4, there were so many Moana, the Disney movie Moana toys, that I was restricted from, and Seth was restricted from. I'm not sure we had anybody in our group that was able to sell them at all. And we were so frustrated, and we couldn't figure out why, because they were made by the Just Play company. And so we sell tons of that stuff. It was no big deal. And so we finally looked, and we realized that Amazon had written that the brand was Moana. And so when you clicked on it, it said you need to get permission from Moana and have Moana give you a letter that you're not restricted. And I was like, Moana is a fictional character in a movie. She cannot give me a letter of approval. So yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was hilarious, but a little frustrating. So there were plenty of other Moana items that we were able to sell, and we made a lot of money with, but so we just skipped over those. So that's one thing that we did learn, that it's important to pay attention to the brand, and that sometimes that brand name will trigger a restriction when it really shouldn't be restricted. And so we helped people to work through that.
And that was something that I saw in your Q4 group, where you were like, no, that's the toy is being restricted. The toy is being the brand, and that's not right. And I mean, I literally watched you guys both help different people take care of that same issue. So, and then they're like, oh, now we're not restricted. So that was really cool.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that just helps all of us in the group, because a lot of times, you know, people would see that they were restricted and they would move on.
Leave it alone.
If they were in our group, then they knew that, hey, it got ungated, and so we can jump right on that listing now.
Yeah, that's nice.
Little insider information kind of.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Another thing to remember is we're always telling people not to list a restricted product on a secondary listing. What we saw happening a lot was that people would create, it was something would get restricted, so people would create another listing and they would take out, sometimes they would write that the brand was generic or unknown, or they would take out the flagged keywords and make a secondary listing, which, you know, I mean, you can argue all day long that you shouldn't be restricted from something, but the fact is, if Amazon restricts you, then you're restricted unless you go through the process to get unrestricted. Right. So what can happen in that case is if you list on that secondary listing and Amazon decides to merge the listings, you're stuck with stranded inventory. Right. So you don't want that to happen to you. And so that's why, you know, if you are, that's one of our other tips when you're dealing with restrictions. If you are restricted from something, you know, just move on to something else. There are so many things that you can sell. And so just move on to something else. And there could even be, we were finding things in the same brand, like, I don't know if they finally did let me go in Lego. But even when I was restricted in Lego at first, there were still Lego sets that I could sell. And so it was just certain ones that I wasn't allowed to sell. So, you know, there can be certain things in that brand that you can sell. So if you just have to sell Pokemon or have to sell Lego or something and you're finding yourself restricted, then, you know, take the time and just start scanning away and go through things and see if you can find something. And, you know, if not, then move on to something else, because there's always more profitable inventory out there for you.
Right. And that's the second one would probably be the more preferable one. Go to something good.
Right.
Quit searching, you know.
Well, that takes us to the next point. People really focused, you know, and rightfully so. People got really focused and worried, you know, all these things are restricted. But the truth is, in the toy category as a whole, it was only a small portion of restrictions that went through on brands. And yes, most of them were big name brands, but a lot of people who maybe weren't in the know with toys thought, well, that's it. There's nothing else to sell. But truthfully, they had almost no impact on the profitability of that time period, even if you couldn't sell any of the restricted stuff, because there's just so much else in toys in that most people aren't aware of that are doing well. You know, brands that most people have never heard of before, or, you know, lines that people have never heard of before that were unrestricted that they could have sold in. But because they were so worried about these other restrictions, they just never even looked. Like, you know, for instance, Lego's a huge name. Everybody knows what Lego is, but there's almost no money in Lego. I mean, if you sell Legos all year long. I've
hardly ever been able to find money in Lego.
Yeah, Legos, you know, I should maybe clarify that. Current Legos that are currently in stores, modern Legos that are full price, not very much that you're going to find that's worth anything. So, you know, you're talking about maybe one or two Legos in a whole Lego aisle that were worth selling, that people were getting caught up over because they couldn't sell in Lego brands. Where if you go one aisle over to Mega Bloks, which weren't restricted, you could have found a dozen things that made you good money over there, because Mega Bloks has a lot more things that were doing well. And so you had people who got caught up in one but kind of missed the other because of the restrictions. So it's important to not get discouraged when you see these restrictions, because there's so many toys, so many brands and lines, and there's always new ones coming around that, you know, if you get caught up in one and let that be your world, you're going to end up missing the forest for the, you know, that one decent tree. You know, we had a problem with that when we first started toys, where we got our favorites. You know, we had our favorite brands that we could go to, and that was what we would sell. And honestly, I think that hurt us in the short term, because we were missing, you know, the wider world, so to speak. We weren't going to scan all those other lines because, you know, well, this is the popular brand. Monster High was one of our big ones. We were kind of back when Monster High was first starting. We loved Monster High. We would go to Monster High and, you know, we got to sell Monster High. But the truth is, most of the Monster High dolls weren't that good. It was really, you know, just a couple, and then we might make a little bit on some of them. But if we had just taken some time and gone to scan, even Barbie, you know, we would have
Mhm.
found more things. We would have found some better things if we just would have broadened our horizons a little bit. So it's important when you get confronted with these restrictions that you don't let it kind of discourage you and push you down, because there's a wide world of toys, and there's so many other items out there that you can sell that I guarantee you're not restricted in, that you can go to if you are patient. And you know, that's one of the things we focus on in our groups is, you know, yeah, you're restricted in this. Don't worry. This whole category over here, you can sell all these toys. Not
Right.
saying all of them are great, but you know, there's all these other toys that are popular, and you're not restricted in these or these. And that's one of the important things when you get confronted with the restrictions, is just don't let it consume you. Don't let it
Right.
block a whole category off to you just because a few of them, even a few of the bigger name brands have been closed off.
Right. And you know, if you close your mind to it, then you're leaving all, like, you may find something that was way better than the stuff you were trying to find in the first place. I've found that so many times when, you know, sometimes you swing and miss on a day when you go source. It just happens. And I'll just get frustrated. Back in the day, I would get frustrated with it, but I learned to just go, okay, I'm going to go look over here. Like wherever over here was, just to get away from the crap I was looking at, you know. And I tell you, almost every time I would find something that I never would have saw because I wouldn't have been looking for it. Something good that I come home with, you know? So yeah, I agree. That's a great way to look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great tip too. Because sometimes we just get tunnel vision and we, you know, go after our old favorites and miss all the great stuff because especially in toys, there's always new stuff coming out. And so if you get tunnel vision and you're just going to your old regular standby stuff, you miss all the really cool things that are new that a lot of times are a lot more profitable.
Right.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And like I said earlier, there's always something new in toys, and that new stuff tends not to be restricted. So, you know, if you keep your eye on the horizon, you know, yeah, Lego's restricted, but Mega Bloks comes around, you know, and there's always something new around the corner.
And if you are in the know when that new stuff comes out, and you can slide in there and start doing, just like you said, start buying while it's not restricted, and then you've got proof that, hey, I've sold this and it's been good. I mean, then your grandfather. That's a great tip.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I don't know if we have any questions or anything that have anything to do with the restrictions and stuff.
I don't
Seth
see
is
any.
supposed to be,
Unless my chat froze, I don't see any.
Okay,
No,
good.
I think we're good. If any of you guys do have questions, you can put some in there and we'll get to what we can. But yeah, do use that. And again, I hope you're taking notes. Thumbs up, you know, let us know in the comment section or in the chat that you're enjoying this. I mean, it's so much information. So it's very cool. Thank you guys so much for being here. And I'll let you go on to tip number 5.
All right. Well, we love being on your show. It's a lot of fun. So
I love having you guys. And I'm telling you, I got so much great feedback from you guys being on here before. So it's because you bring it. You come with all the information. And I mean, it's amazing. So I'll shut up now and let the experts talk.
I'm not sure I feel comfortable with that title, but okay.
Well, sometimes you just are a thing, you know.
You have no choice.
That's it.
All right. So number 5 is, you know, we talk a lot about toys and a lot about all the different characters and everything, but Seth and I don't just sell specifically toys, but our number 5 tip is to use your knowledge of toy trends to cross over into other categories. So that's another huge thing. I mean, out of 100%, I think probably 95 to 97% of my stuff is character stuff, but it's not all toys. Not all of it is going to be an actual action figure or, you know, a little doll or something or a play set. So I always use my knowledge of toys and what characters are hot and what things are going on to cross over. So if you find out what that popular character line is, then start looking for it in clothing or shoes or kitchen, home and grocery, all those kind of places. I know a lot of times one of my big sellers is sleepwear. And so, and I'll go online to Disney Store if you're doing OA. I love Disney Store's sleepwear, and it usually does a lot better than other sleepwear. And I also love to go to Kohl's. Kohl's is one of my favorite places to go for sleepwear. And so, you know, there's a lot of things like that, slippers or sandals and all those different characters, swimsuits, depending on, you know, the time of year, or robes if it's cold. So all those kind of things to look for those characters. Even in grocery, I have sold character cereal. I've sold, obviously, we talked about candy before with the different seasons and holidays. But I've also sold fruit snacks when Frozen, the movie Frozen was super hot. There was like a fruit snack bundle that was, and the only difference was the picture on the outside of the box. But if you could get all, if you could get all those different pictures, you cleaned up. And I remember thinking, okay, there's got to be some kind, like there's different character fruit snacks inside there. No, they were exactly the same. It was just a different box. So, but whatever.
I saw my nephew literally was handed a frozen water. It was a water with the doll was on the top as the lid, right?
Yes.
And he's like, "No, Mom, I want Elsa." It was water. Like I'm just like, this the same water, bro. So I mean, when I said I've seen it, I mean, I thought, I'm just like, are you kidding me? So she gave him the Elsa. I'm just whatever works, man. Those are our customers.
Kids decide what's popular in those things. Kids decide that, not the parents. Parents don't get the choice. The kid wants Elsa. The Elsa one's going to sell. Doesn't matter if it's the same water as all the other ones. So you got to keep that in mind looking outside the box on these.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago when one of the Cars movies came out, I went to a local grocery store and bought cereal with a car, the Lightning McQueen on the front of it. And I think I did a bundle of 2, and they were like $2 a piece, $1.99, and I sold those for $20 for a bundle of 2 of those. Because they had Lightning McQueen on it. That cereal is no good. I have bought that cereal for my daughter, not for $20 on Amazon, but $2 at the grocery store. And she never I don't think she has ever finished a box. The cereal is gross. It doesn't matter what character they're putting on the front of that box. It is all the same cereal inside, and it's no good. But parents will pay for that. And so you know, those are the kind of things that are really important when you know those characters and you get comfortable with that. And, you know, I mean, when Moana was restricted during Q4, Moana food was not, her cereal was not. And so, you know, there are some other things that you can do to kind of broaden your horizons out into those other categories and still using everything that you're learning from knowing toys and getting used to them and getting familiar with that category. Another thing, I'll let Seth talk about video games because he's like the video game expert, because I'm not. Anytime I'm doing video games, I'm like, Seth, I'm going to go shopping for your video games. Tell me what to get. But like in kitchen, a lot of times, especially around back to school time, any kind of food storage is really good. And I even found Glad bags with Star Wars characters on them were doing really good at Christmas time. And so same little tiny Glad bags that are plain, but they just had, you know, Darth Vader or somebody on them. I can't even remember who it was. And another thing, if you are approved for luggage, that's where a lot of the back to school backpacks are going to end up, in either luggage or clothing. So if you're not already approved for those, I would try to get approved for those if you plan on doing any kind of back to school selling, because a few years ago when people first started putting backpacks into clothing, I kind of figured they did that because it kept their competition down, because in toys, everybody could sell that backpack. In clothing, it was like 2 or 3 people were selling that backpack instead of 20 or 30 or 50. So, and so that's another thing to remember. Now I think almost all backpacks end up falling into the clothing category, at least the ones that are good that I've sold. So that's something to keep in mind, that if, even no matter what time of year that you're watching this video, you're probably, since it's our non-Q4, you're probably either way before back to school or coming up on back to school. So take the time and try to get approved for luggage and clothing if you're not already, so that way you've got that opportunity and can take advantage of that when it comes up.
I have a video, if you look it up on YouTube, for getting ungated. I don't remember, or just look on my channel. It's like how to easily, I don't use the word ungated though. I use a different word, be approved to sell in certain categories. So check that out. It gives you a walkthrough, and a lot of people have found a lot of success with it. So
that's awesome. That is a great service to have, because some of those are kind of difficult to get approved in if you don't have somebody kind of holding your hand while you're walking through that process.
Yeah, and this one, well, because they're so easy, some of them are so easy to get into. I was actually going to show about services that help you get into them, but some of them are wide open still. People are getting ungated in them all the time. Yeah, I know. I didn't know either. That's why I made the video. I'm like, well, I'll just show some people. So again, you can find out how to get approved in, I think I say gated categories or something like that, but it should be easy to find them. So, but yeah, that's a great tip. I mean, and the bags thing, I never would have thought of that. Like, so much stuff I hear when I'm listening to you guys, I'm just like, yeah, I really should be writing this down, honestly.
I can send you a copy of my notes. It's on there.
There you go. That would be great.
So yeah, you're going to want to take your knowledge of toys and just spread it across all those other categories. And because there are certain times of the year when toys themselves, like action figures, dolls, play sets, those kind of things, start to slow down a little bit, but other things will be doing really well, beach towels and things like that, that'll start to do really good. So it's important to kind of spread the love between all those categories, but you're still essentially using your knowledge of toys to help you find success even then. Right.
Absolutely. No, that's huge. I would used to get into sheets, a lot of different character sheets back before. I just don't do it anymore, but yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah, we do a lot of bedding, and especially we don't do a lot of Target's toy clearance, but when Target has bedding on clearance, we really clean up. Their bedding clearance is awesome. So for kids, for character stuff.
Yeah, that's an amazing little niche right there. So
yeah. Okay, Seth, do you want to talk about video games for a minute?
Okay. Video games are interesting because they're almost like a reverse of what we've been talking about. Toys don't necessarily influence video games. Video games are kind of their own thing, being developed by developers, aren't really influenced by toys, but video games can get toys based around them. And if you understand video games, you can kind of get a little inside track into some of those toys when they come out. Some of it's easy, like Nintendo, you kind of know that Super Mario is popular. Xbox, Halo, they kind of go hand in hand. But at the same time, there are other lesser known things that if you kind of don't really know anything about video games, you're just going to walk right by it. You've never heard of it before. You don't know what it is. But if you know video games, especially when it comes to the collectibles, Funko Pop figures, anything in that kind of area at most stores that are really collectible, that's where you tend to find a lot of video game related toys. And so understanding what's popular there can kind of help you there, weed through all that stuff and find the ones that are, really sticking with people at the time. And the best way to do that is to just spend some time on a place like GameSpot or GameFAQs, if you know what GameFAQs is. And my suggestion there is just go to like a message board for like PC, 3DS, something like that, and just see what the top 10 games are. Just look at what the top 10 games are on the message boards. Those are 10 games that people find really popular and are really talking about at the time. It's the easiest research you've ever done.
I was just going to say, it's like not rocket science at all. And I'm just like, duh. Like, I've never thought to do that. And that's like, that's
I mean, it's certainly not going to give you every single video game out there that's popular, but it's an easy
start.
Then go to GameSpot and just see what they're currently talking about. What are the articles about? Dishonored 2 is an article right now. You'll see a lot of those. No Man's Sky. those are negative articles, so not that one. You know, look at the articles and kind of see what's going on. What are the articles that are being put out there? Are they positive, negative? If they're positive, pay attention when you're in the store. You know, if you see a dishonored figure in the store, I can't recall actually seeing any in like a toy store, but I'm sure you could find them in like a collectible type store, like maybe Hot Topic or something. But FYI, if you think you have no toy stores in your area and you have a Hot Topic, you have a toy store in your area. Just you know, don't limit yourself to Toys R Us. There are plenty of places. But you know, video games really translate to those collectible type things. So just kind of get a feel for what's popular. You don't need to understand every game that's coming out now in the next 6 months or has been popular in the last year. Just see what people are talking about right now. And then as you go forward, you know, as long as you're keeping up with it every, you know, month or so, you'll find that in 6 months, you're current on what's going on in the video game world. You aren't going to learn it in a week, but 6 months from now, if you just check every now and then, see what's going on, you'll find that you know most of the games because you've just been checking on it. So, you know, it's not an instant process. There's no instant fix to it, but keeping up with it over time will let you then be ready because these things hit stores. If Toys R Us, for instance, always has this tiny little section that's their collectible section. And it's way overpriced stuff that is just silly and you shouldn't buy it for yourself, but people like it.
Cool stuff there. Yeah, there is cool
stuff. Like, for instance, you know, I've seen, if anyone knows what the show Sherlock on BBC is, they have Sherlock action figures, you know, old Batman movie action figures, and then they'll have video games, Mega Man X, Minecraft, you know, things like that. FYI, Minecraft is huge and it's a video game, and understanding the video game helps you when you interact with it. So getting aware of the video games kind of can help you get a head up on that collectible area, because when you see those new collectibles, you can say to yourself, oh, that's that new game coming out soon, or that's that game that's really popular right now. Let me check that. Video games themselves, video game toys are not generally as popular as like the popular toys. For instance, some of the most popular World of Nintendo toys are not as popular as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. That's just the nature of the beast. You know, there's no change to that. You can't worry about it too much. Minecraft's like the exception to the rule, and it's to the point now because whoever made the Minecraft toys was very clever about it and essentially made them to mirror Minecraft, where you could make your own little world.
Right.
They were smart. They understood that. So Minecraft has really taken off as a toy too. But in general, video game toys are not quite as popular. But that doesn't mean they're not popular at all. Doesn't mean there's not money in them. There is lots of money in video game toys. And I'm always surprised by how many people don't know about them. And it's just because they don't think to themselves, oh, video games translate over here. They do. And vice versa. As you learn more about the toys, you can see that you can recognize those video games as you're walking through the video game aisle. Video games are kind of their whole separate thing. So, I mean, I'm not going to like talk about how to work through them or anything like that right here. We do go over them in the coaching, but they're different. Totally. So I'm not going to try to
but that's a great tip on finding out the things that are popular that are, like you said, those collectibles, the toys, and a lot of those toys, I don't even think people take them out of the package. They just want them to be on their shelf or whatever, you know. It's like that type of stuff. So yeah, that's so good. I mean, I hope you guys are listening. Like, we're talking about bedding and clothing and, you know, collectible toys for video games and the plastic bags. I mean, if you did not get value in this, you're not listening. Hit the thumbs up. And someone asked in the group over here if I would put a link to that video I was talking about, and that was a great idea by you. I should been on YouTube long enough to think about that. So after this is all done, I'll put a link below on how to get ungated and the ones that are easy now. I should have thought of that, you know?
Well, I think that does it for our tips.
Awesome.
I think we had a couple questions if we want
to
hit
Let
that
me
quick.
say real quick what the tips were, and then we'll get on to questions. So in case you got here late, because this is going on to close to 2 hours now, the 5 tips for selling toys year round. Tip number 1 was keep up with the trends. Tip number 2 is keep up with the holiday and seasons. Tip 3 is be smart with the ranks. Tip 4 is dealing with the restrictions. And tip 5 is using your knowledge of toy trends to cross over into other categories. And if you got here late, you should definitely go back and listen to everything, because once this is recorded, because there's a ton of great information in here. So I'll send it on over to you now with the questions.
Okay, let's see here. First one we have was, do you use a scanner in stores? The answer to which is yes. I'm actually not sure how you would do this job without a scanner. It would be really hard. Yeah, we use scanners in the stores. I know a lot of people worry about it. Like, I think it's weird I'm doing this. The truth is, those employees don't care.
Right.
They're getting paid, either minimum wage or not much above it. They don't care. They're just there to do their job and go home. They don't care if you're scanning. The only time you really need to worry is when maybe a manager's around. But even then, the only place you really need to worry about is at the Target or something like that, where they're kind of hostile to resellers. Walmart wants you to take their stuff. So if you're at Walmart and you're looking through the toys, trust me, they're okay with you buying as much as you want. I when I was at my Walmart the other day, I had 3 carts full of stuff. I mean, me and my wife are pushing it, and I had the manager come up. He's like, "Hey, we got more over here if you want to go look at this over here," because they just want it gone. They don't want it there anymore. Target's really the only one who's what we consider hostile to resellers. And considering that they're not in a great financial position as it is, they should probably change their attitude on that. But that's not really our place to do anything about it. We just, be a little more careful at Target. But overall, we use scanners. It's not a big deal at the majority of stores. If they're a good store, they want you to buy their stuff, and they shouldn't really care why. So, as long as you're not being disruptive, they usually don't care. Now, if you're being disruptive, that's different. That's kind of on you.
Right. Or if you're making piles of stuff, leave the stuff how it was. That's just being a good person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, most places, they might look at you at first when you're scanning. If you act like it's no big deal anyway, then they're just going to ignore it. And then also eventually they're going to get to know you, just like with Beth and Seth at their Toys R Us, and they're going to be like, "Oh, it's that person. Hey, come on over here. I got some good stuff," because they're going to know that you're out there reselling. So those are the places we want to source from anyway, not the Targets, not the place where you're going to be like, "Oh, am I going to get, or you don't want to have to do that. This is how we're making money." So
yeah. And my general rule whenever I'm going into a store is I leave it in better condition than I found it. And so I'm constantly going through and straightening things up. And I mean, I don't do that in the whole store. It would take me forever, and I don't work there. But if I'm scanning stuff, and there's a couple things laying down right where I'm scanning, I'll set them up and make sure that things look neat and stuff. Because I don't want an employee to come in behind me and say, "Oh my gosh, look at this mess that she left."
Right.
I want them to come back and go, "Oh, this looks better than it did before." So that's an important thing and to just keep in mind.
Yeah. And if you prove yourself a good buyer constantly at their store, spending money at their store, you're going to make friends of those managers.
Right.
Trust me. We have managers at our Toys R Us and stuff. They like to see us come in. They help me sometimes find stuff. If I can't find something, I just go to the manager and say, "Hey, I'm looking for this. Do you guys got any more?" They will go out of their way to find it for me because they know I'm going to spend thousands of dollars at their store this month. So, as long as you're not disruptive, you will become a force for good to them. They will like to see you come in. So don't worry too much about it on the scanning side of things. Just make sure you're a good customer to them, and it'll pay off for you in the long run.
Yep, be nice and just keep buying stuff because they don't want to turn away your money. You're making them look good. You make the managers look good when their numbers are better because they got a spike of $500, $1,000, $2,000 in sales on top of their projected whatever they're supposed to get that day. They like that, especially if you come in a lot and you start doing that. So keep that in mind. And if your managers at the places you're at don't get it, go to a different place. That's the way I do it anyway.
We have a question here that was kind of answered. Tina asked, "Do you offer any ungating with the Q4 course?" Now, obviously, we're going to have that video linked for you later on. But in terms of the course itself, no, we don't offer any ungating services. It's not our area of expertise. Anything we would tell you about it would be just, general common knowledge type stuff that we know. but we don't. That's not our area. We would be as likely to steer you wrong as to steer you right if we tried to help you. So we don't offer any of that stuff. Most of the categories are actually very easy to get into. And like you said with the video, you'll see that most of them are. But for like the really technical ones, you're going to want to go to someone who's a professional, like who makes that their job to do that. But also, unless you have a reason to be in those technical ones, in general, it's not worth your time anyways to go through that process. There's not generally a lot of money in there for stuff that you are going to find just around. Like for instance, if you're trying to get into the health and beauty, it can actually be more dangerous than not if you're going into health and beauty, like for RA and stuff. I'm not saying there's no money or anything like that, because there is, but it's also a good way to, if you do it wrong, you get your account shut down. So, it's one of those things where we don't really recommend you go for those kind of really hard ones unless you are an established seller and have a reason to go there. If you're looking for a place to start, take the easy ones. Take the ones that are easy to get into. And for like with toys, everyone can sell toys. There's no requirements. Well, not the restricted ones, obviously, but in general, just general toy category, everyone's allowed to be in there.
Right. Now, if they are confused about ungating in a category versus do you help with the restrictions in toys, what would you say to that if they're confused in that at all?
The restrictions are definitely a different thing from the gating, because I mean the gating is the whole category. You're talking like any clothing, any automotive, anything in that category. Versus in toys, the restrictions are you can't sell Lego, but you can sell everything else that's not Lego, or you can't sell Five Nights at Freddy's, but you can sell everything else that's not Five Nights at Freddy's. So it's definitely different in that sense. We definitely help get, find the ones that you're not restricted in and make sure you can sell through those. In terms of getting unrestricted in the ones you are restricted in, generally we don't, because of the requirements. For instance, a lot of them were $1,000 payment requirements as part of it. It's not likely you're going to make $1,000 on any particular restricted brand anytime soon. So, yes, you could do it, but you're probably better off just going to another brand where you're not restricted, and you can make $1,000 just selling that instead and save your money. If someone has questions about it, we're happy to answer, but that's not like a specific service we offer to get unrestricted in those restricted brands. Just because, one, they're new, and two, we don't think they're really worth it for the most part, and three, because I've never been restricted in them. For instance, in the last restrictions, I was not, as far as I know, restricted in anything. So I don't have the experience.
Right.
You
would look over, maybe if someone said, hey, I'm restricted in this, and you could look at the thing and say, oh, well, that's that, like you said before, you guys were talking about how it wasn't the brand that was restricted, it was the Disney character that was restricted. That Disney character was the brand. Like, just pointing out things like that would be kind of general helpful tips. Yeah,
there's always exceptions to the rule. Like, for instance, when Five Nights at Freddy's last year, there were the proper listings, which had, for some of the construction sets, McFarlane as the maker, and those were unrestricted. Then there were the improper ones, which had Five Nights at Freddy as the maker. And that's the difference between, something that's improperly restricted that you can get fixed easily on your end, versus something where if you weren't allowed to sell McFarlane, I can't really help you, because that's a different kind of restriction that goes beyond just this newer restriction that was improper. No one should have been restricted from Five Nights at Freddy itself, because there is no Five Nights at Freddy maker. But
so that was cool that you were able to help out in those different situations, but you don't have a service per se. You just can kind of go, oh, this is wonky, go to Amazon and do this, or
it's really not an area of expertise for us. So I mean, any information we give there is going to be just kind of the general knowledge stuff, but it's not stuff that we would tell you to like take to the bank with you and get it notarized, because that's just not our expertise, and we don't want to pretend otherwise, because we don't, that can be serious stuff, getting restricted stuff. That can be whole account shut down if done wrong. So We definitely don't want to give anyone the impression that, oh, join the group and you can do whatever you want.
Right.
That's just, it's not the right description of what we do.
Right. It's just more of held by the hand, take a look at things general, and it's not a service you provide, but you get all the other great stuff that goes along with it. Did you happen to see any other questions that needed to be gone over? We're just about, we're at 2 hours here now. So
I see one more.
We bring the party, man. We bring the party.
I see one more question. I was asked, what scanner do we use? Which is easy. We use Scoutify from Inventory Lab. Now, you have to actually pay for Inventory Lab to get Scoutify. But all in all, most of the scanners are generally the same nowadays. There's not a whole lot of difference between them in terms of quality. Some of them are faster than others. Some of them work better on Android than iPhone. But I've never had a problem with Scoutify, so I've never really had a reason to change. But, Profit Bandit, Scam Power, there's a lot of them out there. Generally, I would say pick the one that works best for you for what you need. We use Scoutify because we already use the Inventory Lab service.
Right.
If I didn't use the Inventory Lab service, I probably wouldn't use Scoutify because that would be a lot of money to pay just for Scoutify. But, if you're already using it, then that's just an added bonus. So make sure you pick the one that works best for you. But all in all, we're kind of past the point where there's one that's head and shoulders above the rest. Most of them are pretty close in terms of service offered. So, I wouldn't worry too much about it as long as you have a scanner that's working. Just make sure it's an actual scanner for Amazon sellers. Don't try to use as your main scanner, like a pick to shop, because that's not what it's there for. It's there for a buyer. It's there for buyers who want to find a better price. It's not for sellers. So use something that's made for sellers. Pick to shop's fine as a backup, like something to use when you just, something's not going right. But make sure that your main one is something that's made for sellers. And even the main Amazon app.
I was just going to ask you. You didn't mention that. I wonder. That would be my backup to my fast ones.
Yeah, I don't use it
or to see if I'm restricted in something.
Yeah, it is good for you if you're restricted. Although most of the scanners now also incorporate things for that too. But
true.
Even the Amazon app, if you just don't want to pay for anything, it's going to take more work if you just use the Amazon app, but it still works, and it's also free if you are currently selling on Amazon. So, there's a lot of options open to you.
Awesome. All right, you guys. Well, did you have anything else that you want, any little last desires here? That I think we've covered about every single thing. This really shouldn't be free. I should be charging people to come here and watch this stuff, man. You guys have given so much info. I so appreciate it. So was there anything else that you wanted to add?
No,
I don't think.
No,
yeah, I think we've got it all out of you. Just squeeze it out. Well, that is awesome. I just want to thank you guys for coming on here and taking the time to be here. I mean, that's 2 hours of your time, and I truly appreciate it. And you guys, please give the thumbs up, comment down below, share this video with other people that you think can find value in it, because all the information that was just given was so much good information. So again, I want to thank you guys for being on the show. I'm honored that you'd be here again, and thank you very much. And absolutely. And I'd like to thank the audience for joining the show. And also, I wanted to throw it out here one last time about the if you found the information valuable, you see that these guys know their stuff when it comes to the toys. I mean, if you don't get it by now, this probably isn't right for you anyway. But these guys know their stuff when it comes to coaching, and they care about their students succeeding. So you can find out more about it at DollarMoves.com/toy coaching, and that'll be a link down below as well. Make sure before you purchase, use the coupon code ROB2017 and you'll get $50 off the coaching. So if you find, it's on you now. I mean, you can see these guys know their stuff. Get on over there and get it going if you see the value in it and can see it helping your business. So again, you guys, thank you so much for being on here. It's always a blast. I'm sure we'll do it again. So thanks again, and we'll see y'all later. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rob.
Thank you.